Hey everybody, Dutch Sense here. 11:34 p.m. Central Time on Sunday, February 9th, 2014. And we're looking at IntelliCast here. It's been a while since I've done a weather update. I wanted to show you guys something that's going to be going on over the next several days throughout the South again. Another winter storm going throughout Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Now, this has been going on for the last several weeks. Multiple snowstorms reaching far south, some even reaching down to the coast, down to the Gulf Coast. Now, while not completely impossible, and it has happened before, this is a repeat event now that's been happening. And over the last several weeks, the mainstream media has been talking about this polar vortex. And I wanted to just get into that, show you guys a little bit of what's going on, so you know what to expect going into the future, maybe even possibly into the spring. Since we're just a couple months away, this pattern doesn't look like it's going to be shifting anytime soon. Now, I'm going to put links down below for this. We're looking at my streaming radar page over on my website, and I put together multiple radars that you can watch North America. But I'm going to bring you down, and you guys can do this yourself, of course, and we're going to look at the Northern Hemisphere first. And to do that, we're going to go over to College of DuPage, and we'll let the Northern Hemisphere load. This is the Northern Hemisphere water vapor loop, and we're going to go look at the infrared loops next. But this shows you the overall pattern that's been dominating over the United States for the last several months. And that polar vortex that they've been talking about, the one that's spinning here up over northeast Canada, has been pulling this cold Arctic air down from the Pacific Northwest and the Northwest down here as far south as the Gulf Coast. And you can see the dominating flow that's going on here. It's not going to stop anytime soon. To get a better view of that, let's go over to the main College of DuPage page, and we'll click on Hemispheric Products. And we were just looking at the Northern Hemisphere. I'm going to take you to the polar view, and this will give us the last 7 days. And the way you do this is you turn on the infrared view, and then you can color enhance this. This will enable you to see the temperatures. The colder the temperatures, the higher the clouds. The higher the clouds, usually the bigger the storm. And so you can gauge the size of these storms based upon the color coding that's going on here. And let me just do that now. Okay, we're going to go through a few of these, and you can see what's going on. This polar vortex, the center now is edging slightly eastward, but it's still centered over northeast Canada, going right up towards Greenland. And that is pulling from the south all the way down to the equator. It's having a shearing effect just west of Mexico out here over the Pacific, and it's pulling up to the northeast. That's pulling in moisture from the south, but the northern flow, as you can see, is dominating, and it's pulling down Arctic cold air. We're talking sub-zero temperatures going down here into the center United States. I live here in Missouri, okay, right here in St. Louis, and I can tell you, we've been having snowstorm after snowstorm, several unexpected snowstorms. For instance, today, only forecast for maybe just a little bit of a snow flurry. Instead, we got several inches. And this has been happening over and over again, going far south and causing big-time problems far north with the cold, going into far sub-zero temperatures right near the border. Now, look at the flow to the west. Here's Alaska. Southwest of Alaska, this flow here, this to me looks like a new polar vortex kicking up. And it is going to make its way east-southeast, just like the previous massive low. You couldn't even call this a low. You should call this a polar vortex because a low pressure system, this is multiple low pressure systems rotating around this Arctic vortex. Now, normally you would expect the Arctic vortex to be up here over the North Pole where it's blacked out. And this is due to the satellite imagery. This is not a conspiracy. They do block that out because of the overlay mosaic that we're looking at here from above. And when you see this, let me go ahead and turn on a different color view now. We're going to look at the ZA curve, and that'll just highlight main cloud tops here. And the color code on the right isn't going to help here, but it's going to show you the rotation of the multiple lows. And each low pressure system is a swirling, counterclockwise rotating system, and multiples are making up these new polar vortexes that are pulling all the way down south into the southern United States. What does this mean going into the future? over the next couple months, when you look at this, well, I mean, this pattern is not going to change. We've got multiple large polar vortex occurring. This is battering Europe. England is getting just decimated by large storms and power outages, people caught in the cold. That's over here in Europe. Here in the United States, I don't have to tell you. Okay, it is really starting to get to the point where cold is dominating pretty much the entire country. Now, we can hope that that's going to stop come spring. However, there have been times in the past where spring did not come. 1816, for instance, the year that there was no summer, they had a volcanic winter. Now, we're not going to have a volcanic winter, but we are having large amounts of particulate matter induced into the atmosphere via multiple volcanic eruptions around the planet and man-made activities to reflect solar radiation. And the intent is to create a slight volcanic winter using man-made spray of sulfur dioxide for solar radiation management, reflect sun back out into space, and induce cooling. Okay? Now, this is a problem, if you ask me, because if we're already having a dominating polar vortex naturally, then the solar radiation management that's going on could lead us to have a slightly cooler spring than we would expect. And like in 1816 with the volcanic winter, they went the entire summer where almost every night got below freezing. And there was massive crop failure, and people, well, at the time, luckily, there was enough to supply for the entire population. Today, we don't keep those years' worth of food supplies stored up. So if something did happen this spring, let's say the polar vortex dominated into May, then we might have a problem. Now, what we're looking at here, the reason we're looking at this is the cryosphere today. And you can see it's current as of yesterday over on my YouTube page. And of course on YouTube. This is going to be uploaded to Daily Motion, by the way. But over on YouTube, Tattooed put out a video right here saying global warming or ice age. And the reason he's saying that, and the reason I'm doing this video, is to let you guys know that the northern hemisphere is entirely dominated by ice right now. And Tat, in his video, compared to previous years going back to 1979. And he shows you in his video that things are actually cooling. That this supposed North Pole melting is, a farce. This past year in 2013, multiple mainstream news reports that the North Pole completely melted. This is the mainstream here reporting this, guys. We came out and corrected the situation, showed everybody the Cryosphere Today site, and it's keeping track of the polar ice concentrations. And of course, the pole was not melted. And the mainstream media came back out and corrected themselves after the correction was issued in social media. But look at the South Pole. You can compare the South Pole to previous times, and we don't really have time to do that here in this video. But I can tell you from previous observations, here the Arctic ice usually extends out very far from the edge of the continent. This, of course, is summer down in the South Pole, but we're seeing large amounts of ice melt off on the South Pole. Now let's go back to the North Pole here again and look at the concentrations. Sea ice concentration, 100% from, let's say, northern Canada all the way across to Russia. And of course, then the snowpack augmentation that's going on here, naturally speaking, and again, man-made snowpack augmentation as well happening over the North Pole. Look up the Arctic Methane Emergency Group to find out more on that. Overall, we've got a real problem kicking up here in the United States, if you ask me personally. When you start to see multiple snowstorms reach down into areas where it's normally somewhat temperate, this could have an effect on the plant life in the South, let's say. You've got a lot of that creeping vine, the Spanish vine. Well, that's actually good news. This might actually kill off some of the creeping vine. Several of the pests that have been dominating over the last several years, they are already reporting there are going to be much fewer bugs this year. Specifically in the Midwest, the Japanese beetle outbreak. Much fewer Japanese beetles this coming year due to this Arctic cold blast that's happening. That's an added benefit to pests that are not normally native to North America. Around the planet, though, well, there is no positive to this. We're talking dramatic amounts of cold for long periods of time, and the mainstream media sort of touching on it a little bit, but not really giving you the science behind it. How long is this going to go on for? What's causing this? Well, let's go back over and check the poles again. Okay, we're going to load up. This time we're going to load the water vapor, and we're going to look down on the poles. And this will give you a great idea of the multiple vortexes that are occurring here. We have at least 2, possibly 4 if you count over here over Siberia. But I'm counting 1 here off the west coast, 1 here off the east coast. We also looks like we have 1 just north of India and another 1 over Siberia. Normally you would see this all rotating up here to the north. It's pulling far to the south this year. Let's hope that it backs off. If it doesn't, we've got problems come spring. I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch on that. We have to watch this over the next several months and see what happens. If we start getting into April and we still see the polar vortex kicking in, bringing in cold Arctic northerly air down to the southern United States, that will be a point where food supplies, stock, that kind of thing is going to have to be considered. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. It's February 9th. We've only got 2, possibly 3 months for this pattern to break. So let's hope that occurs. If not, we'll be addressing that down the road. Much love, folks. I'll put links down below for all this, of course. Multiple weather monitoring links. You saw my radar page. We also have a page of just straight links, and this goes all around the world. USA, international, and every country has their own meteorological agency. You can check these to see temperatures and, of course, see radar and satellite feeds from other countries. US has the best, of course. We put a lot of money into it. Several other countries are trying to do their best, but they have much less. Okay? Cheers.